Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's Weekly Notice with Andy Ngo. Please leave your questions and comments throughout the live stream, and I will get to it towards the end. I really appreciate you tuning in tonight. It's been a very, very eventful week, so let's get started right away. Just about a week ago, it was actually Friday of last week that the U.S. Supreme Court um, released their decision that everybody had been anticipating, and that was that the Supreme Court voted to strike down Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade was the historic ruling in the early 70s that guaranteed abortion access across the United States in all 50 states and territories. Prior to that, abortion legislation was made at the state level. So you had some states that were very non-restrictive in their abortion laws, and you had some that outright banned it, and everything in between. You've probably heard all the criticisms against the striking down of Roe v. Wade if you've read any of the reporting. One thing that's often forgotten is that the decision from the Supreme Court actually makes abortion legislation more democratic, because now it's because it's not a uniform. There's not a uniform view on it in the United States. Certainly in states or places on the West Coast or the Northeast have very progressive views, if you will, on abortion, with some going as far as to be pro-abortion. And then you have places like Oklahoma, Mississippi, Alabama, and other states that, on average, have views that are more pro-life. Well, the response from the mainstream left has been to unleash a torrent of violence from coast to coast, particularly in Democrat-run cities and states where not only are there in states where many of them have no restrictions at all on abortion, like let's say California or Oregon. Oregon, where I'm from, doesn't even set within its legislation a certain week cutoff date. So much of in many parts of America, particularly where a lot of the population is, the laws on abortion are actually way less restrictive than they are in some of the most liberal parts of Western Europe. Germany, for example, I believe only allows abortions up to 15 weeks. In a lot of countries in Western Europe, that's about the average. The United Kingdom has the most lax rules on abortion at 24 weeks. But in places like California and Oregon and Massachusetts and other states, there it goes beyond that. And all you have to do is to find a medical provider who's willing to perform the service, and you can have it done legally in many places in America. So I'm going to pull up some of the advertisements of violence on social media in response to the overturning of Roe v. Wade, which was basically instant, the rage, because they had been given many, many weeks to prepare due to the criminal leaking of the draft opinion weeks ago, as you may recall. We still don't know how that happened, by the way. And there were many daily threats against the Supreme Court justices, people who showed up at their families' homes and continue to, and of course there was a murder-suicide plot that was foiled by investigators of a man who allegedly wanted to murder Justice Kavanaugh. Okay, so Leading up to days before the Roe v. Wade opinion that was released last week, there were already flyers all across DC calling for a quote, night of rage. And this was the flyers attributed to Jane's Revenge, which is the far left terrorist group that first came out with a claim of responsibility for a firebombing attack on a pro-life organization in Wisconsin a number of weeks ago. And since then, a number of attacks have happened all over the United States, claimed by this group. Their slogan is, "If abortions aren't safe, then neither are you." It's really a threat. It's not quite a slogan. So yeah, DC Antifa were very active. This was the flyer that they immediately put out. "They cannot control our bodies. Join us in Folger Park, 7:30 tonight. Look at this part crucially. Wear black and bring a mask for COVID safety. Wink, wink. We don't care about COVID. The mask is about concealing their identities." Portland, of course. So even before the decision was released, this was from an Antifa account in Portland, DigitPal, they had already announced plans to riot. Prep your riot bags, check your block, as black block as in the black clothing, the black mask, drink some water. This was before the decision was released. And then once it was, they announced the gathering at Lonsdale Square. And Lonsdale Square is right across from the federal courthouse in downtown Portland, the same place that I was beaten in 2019, where a number of attacks have happened. Lonsdale Square is this mini park that Antifa used to gather, and they set up camp there before in 2020. That was their operations base, where they regathered every night, got their supplies, and had their various weapons ready there, had tents set up, yeah, and so on and so forth. This is another Antifa account. Is your bag packed? Let's effing go. So I documented this all in a thread last week as it was happening live. Look at these messages that were being posted by Antifa. Names and addresses. They have names and addresses. Their families have them too. It disturbs me that it's not taken with more urgency, that we have so many people in groups threatening violence against judges in the United States. I mean, stuff like this is what happens in Latin America, in countries where democracy is very weak, where democracy is not that old and it's not that embedded. But in addition to these threats against judges, we've seen how during this current administration that various federal agencies have been weaponized against critics of Biden or his family or his administration. There's been a number of FBI raids and investigations on journalists, on Trump supporters, people who didn't have any involvement in violence on the 6th of January, but nonetheless have been subjected to arrests and raids that then make the headlines, that are used to ruin and destroy their lives and their reputations. A lot of the people that were threatening violence or calling for violence on Twitter were also accounts that are verified, by the way. I have a separate thread of that on Twitter, but there's just so much that I'm not even get to go into it. By the way, this is the Antifa account for the DC area, and they were calling for violence against Jack Posobiec, who was outside the Supreme Court. Yeah, so that night, there was violence across the United States in the places you would expect. I think the most shocking of the incidents was what happened in Phoenix, Arizona, which is also where the state capital is. So so the lawmakers were in session at the time, but there was a large mob of left-wing, pro-choice, pro-abortion activists who had surrounded the Capitol building, and according to law enforcement, were trying to shatter and break down the glass doors and windows so they could get inside. I'll show you a video. This is from a lawmaker, Michelle Genti Rita, who recorded what was happening inside the courthouse. This was Friday last week in the evening in Phoenix, Arizona, at the state capitol. So the scenes there were actually very reminiscent of part of the 6th of January riot. What happened shortly after this video was recorded is that Department of Public Safety fired off a lot of tear gas right outside the building, and that cleared the crowd immediately and they dispersed. Yeah, here's a video of some of the tear gas being fired off. Yeah, so the actions at the Phoenix Capitol were excused by people on the left, and actually violence there was encouraged. And the spin was that innocent, peaceful people, were being gassed by police, which is the same refrain that they used when rioters with Antifa and BLM and the far left tried to burn down the federal courthouse last year. Not last year, in 2020, and tear gas was used. Los Angeles also had a lot of violence. It escalated actually into one instance, which I'm going to play the video, where a person was caught on video using a makeshift flamethrower on an LAPD officer. Yeah, so this is on the 24th of June.
Holy shit! Holy shit!
Yeah, so the suspect in that, by the way, was arrested. And if you watch some of the videos from the far left videographers and Antifa people with cameras is what they are, like this person, they lied about what was going on, lied about this being a peaceful protester who had been beaten on the ground and was having a seizure, and that police wouldn't allow others to help him. I've seen this over and over at these riots. What happens is when there's an arrest, immediately they try to de-arrest the person, which is to try to pull the suspect away. When that fails, then they'll say things like the police, like that person's having a seizure, or they're having a medical emergency and the police need to let up. And they say that so that if the officer does let up, was distracted or something, that their comrades will move in to pull this person away. But this individual was arrested. This is a suspect accused of using the makeshift flamethrower on an LAPD officer, which, by the way, suffered burns to his face and hands and needed treatment. The suspect's name is Michael Ortiz. He was charged with attempted murder, and his bail is set at $1 million in the LA County Sheriff's Department. He wasn't the only one arrested. There was also Juliana Bernardo here. She's accused of trying to steal an officer's baton. Her bail was set at $25,000, by the way, and she was quickly bailed out by a bail fund group. And here's from her social media, retweeting them. Got her out, thank you. Jail support LA. I looked a bit into Juliana Bernardo's background. This is still from her arrest at the Los Angeles riot, by the way, which was attended by Antifa. You had mobs of them in black bloc with their umbrellas, which they use as weapons and also to obscure and block the view of their comrades when they commit crimes. Juliana comes from a well-to-do family background. According to her LinkedIn, she was in the ROTC at one point. She recently graduated from Santa Clara University. And here's another photo of Juliana Bernardo after police. All the cities that experienced violence in 2020 after George Floyd died also experienced violence related to pro-abortion militancy. And that's because the networks and groups and activists that were radicalized in 2020 are still around. And then the relationships and networks that they built around riot tactics, how to get money, the pooling together money, pooling resources together, that's all still there. These networks and groups were never broken up, unfortunately. And so, of course, they're able to quickly mobilize together on instant notice and carry out carnage. In Seattle, remember, that's where the Chaz was, where they actually seized 6 city streets and created an autonomous zone that became deadly. So this is video from the post-millennial contributor Katie Davis Court, just capturing the size of Antifa Black Bloc in Seattle. So they were allowed to embed within a larger so-called pro-choice group. And of course, they were aided, as always, by extremists involved with the National Lawyers Guild. You can see it here, the people in those green vests and hats. When I first started doing journalism, I actually thought because their hats say National Lawyers Guild and they'll identify themselves as legal observers. As just an on-the-ground journalist, I originally thought that they were genuinely doing something good. I thought, oh, great, it's great to have neutral observers who are observing what's happening to provide another record, potential testimony. And then I unfortunately quickly found out that these are extremists themselves. The National Lawyers Guild historically is linked to the Communist Party in the United States. After the appeal of that went away with communism, they now just support all matter of far left communist anarchist causes. Their organization provides bail support to violent far left extremists. They provide them free legal aid. They can connect their comrades with attorneys. This is all free, by the way, in most states, if not all the states. And they engage in lawfare against the targets. They file lawsuits against cities. And so, yeah, if you see them, you should be afraid for your safety, because even though they may not necessarily be the one to take the bat to your face or your head, they'll certainly tell their comrades who to target. And I've seen them do that before. And also in LA, by the way, some of the NLG people became violent that night. So sometimes they're not even able to contain themselves. and they are explicitly instructed to be nonviolent because they want to give this video of being neutral observers, which they're not. Here's a video from Seattle that you need to see. So there was a very brave young woman there who's holding up a sign that said, I think it said, "Life wins," something like that. Anyway, she's a pro-choice supporter. And this is in Seattle. She came there with just one person. I don't know if it's her friend or a security guard or whoever, but just one man standing by her side. And she stood up peacefully on the side here on the street, on the sidewalk. And the crowd marched by her and became really incensed. And when I first saw this video footage, it was recorded by Katie Davis Court, I knew that once Antifa saw her, that they're not going to leave her alone. That they'll narrow their targets on her and would injure her. Unfortunately, I didn't know who this young woman was. There was no way for anybody to warn her of the danger. I think a lot of people can be naive and think that in a big liberal city that you can peacefully express your opposing view on whatever matter. And you might get people who are upset, but you don't think that people, particularly a mob, would go up and harm a young woman. She looks like she may even be a teenager. I'm not quite sure. But so this is the beginning of the video when people were just arguing with her.
Regulate other people's parties?
The state. A lot of people in the South who don't agree with abortions in the South.
So are they more important than me?
No,
but then what about people who agree like me in the South? Do they, if they get outnumbered, are their votes less important?
A lot of people say if you don't agree with the politics of a certain state, then move out.
Excuse me, miss. How old are you?
I'm 32.
We think that there's a lot of things wrong with the system. I think there's a lot of things wrong with society too.
So did you just see that? I'm going to go back a little bit. Another woman who came up appears to try to pepper spray them with her weapon, and the device doesn't work. Just watch it.
Whoa, 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 hey!
Unfortunately, this is the reality of what things are like in Portland and Seattle. You can be a young woman, you can be a girl, you can be an older person, it doesn't matter. And people feel emboldened to carry out violence with you in daytime, in front of cameras, in the middle of a city, in front of a courthouse. It doesn't in front of a police station. I mean, when I was beaten, it was pretty close to Central Police Station in 2019. This is what happened to the young woman. Katie Davis Court got the video of the Antifa mob running up and really badly injuring her. I'm going to play it. Yeah, so that's about as close as Katie Davis Court was able to get to because she's also been threatened with death by Antifa for her recording. But you can see that there was a cloud of bear mace, this orange mace that Antifa always use against their targets. And that woman was, well, here she is. When I see incidents like this happen and I don't see a unified response in condemning this type of violence, that troubles me a lot. It certainly is not surprising anymore. I think a lot of the mainstream left makes it clear that they are comfortable with political violence that furthers their aims. But it's so anti-American, and people don't recognize that. And this thing that I keep banging on about is that I'm concerned about the future of the country if more and more people feel that the response to political views they disagree with is to enact out violence, because that's a game that any side can play, and it leads to people getting killed, as we've seen happen before. So that was just Seattle. Oh gosh, by the way, if you are joining in now, joined in late, and you missed the beginning, please leave your questions and comments. I'll get to it soon. I'm an independent journalist. I also do freelance journalism. This type of work, curating together, particularly on my Twitter, is actually a lot of work. Takes a lot of time because you have dozens and dozens of different sources all together. Some of them have gone viral, some don't, and getting it all together into these threads that are organized, and following up on them takes a lot of time and work. So if you can support me, please support me on my Patreon /AndyNGO, my locals, which is ngo.locals.com, or even my Subscribestar. Any of those subscriptions really help. It's only, you can set how much you want to give, either one time or a few dollars a month. But yeah, that's how you can support me if you find like these live streams and the work that I do interesting and informative and important. Okay. In Eugene, Oregon, which is where the University of Oregon is, it's in the middle of the state, there was an attempted violent attack by Antifa that was thwarted by the Eugene Police Department. Eugene is very small. It's a college town, but it's also where there's a lot of far left militancy there. Part of that is due to the influence of the university. And in 2020, there was a whole lot of Antifa violence there for one small town. So the Eugene police, they released a press release stating that there was about a group of 75 people in black who had gathered outside the Dove Pregnancy Resource Center. So a lot of what we're seeing now is basically, it's the same tactics used of 2020. You have Antifa gathering either at a target to attack or nearby and then going to it. In 2020, the targets were primarily police stations. However, they also targeted courthouses and everything, in businesses, of course. Anything that were nearby, any of those places would get smashed up, set on fire. But here, so in Eugene, they gathered. I'm going to pull up the press release. So the pregnancy resource centers have been under attack now for many, many weeks after, right after the draft opinion was released on the Roe v. Wade. And so I'm quoting from the Eugene Police Department. Some people were observed picking up rocks, and several began putting on gas masks. One female had a chemical pump sprayer, and she was pumping it up. So yeah, the potential for violence was high, and the mob was big. And so Eugene police had to scramble to get police from Springfield Police Department, which is nearby, and also, was it DHS? Let's look. Yes, Department of Homeland Security officers mobilizing for what they call mutual aid in law enforcement. It's when different agencies, different departments work together. And there were a number of arrests. I document them in a thread on Twitter. There's Kira and Elliot. All of them were young. The ones that I was able to look into come from very well-to-do, privileged backgrounds. Like Kira and Elliot, for example, she works as a social justice coordinator at a private college in Pennsylvania, Bryn Mawr College. Another one, Orion Timothy Deschamps, arrested at the Eugene Antifa attempted attack on the Dove Pregnancy Center. This is Orion in a Soviet Union era military outfit. There are other names here I document. There are no pictures, as you notice, and the reason for that is the state of Oregon, in response to me releasing the mugshots, in 2020 passed legislation banning law enforcement agencies from releasing mugshots. So the first day of, on Friday last week, the first day of the Roe v. Wade decision, the violence in Portland actually was quite tame compared to some of these other areas cities that I just talked about, shockingly. They marched in a very large group. I think it was because it wasn't their own direct action. They were part of a larger one. And so they were forced along a particular route that they otherwise wouldn't have taken. But they did take the opportunity to smash up the Pioneer Place Mall in downtown, which is the place in 2020. They broke their way into it and helped mobs of other people carry out looting. You may remember the video where they looted, Antifa opened the doors to the Louis Vuitton inside the mall, and you see all these youths running in and running out with the Gucci bags. Yeah, looting Gucci bags for George Floyd. But Portland is never outdone with violence, ultimately, because the Antifa presence there is so large and so ingrained in part of the city. So there were 4 nights of back-to-back violence. Not nights, 4 days, because some of it occurred during the daytime. 4 days of back-to-back violence in Portland. So that did surpass any other place in the United States. So on the second night, they gathered for a so-called direct action this was Saturday, June 25th. And the flyers are just posted like in 2020, just on Twitter. So everybody can see it, police can see it. It's pre-announced, and police did not intervene. And so what Antifa did was they smashed up businesses. They smashed up a van for the Portland Public Schools, for abolished schools. Smashed up the Starbucks. Starbucks is one they always go after. Starbucks, by the way, is a corporation that says they will pay for their employees to travel for abortions. So, yeah. And of course, Starbucks donated in 2020 a lot of money to BLM causes. This was a Tesla that they just smashed up. And the Portland police released a statement and said that they were aware of this violent riot, but did not intervene because they didn't have enough resources, because there was a shooting and a stabbing in another part of the city, and they had to direct their resources there. The Portland police are really short-staffed. The people of Portland are dealing with the continued consequences of what happened when the city council gave in to the demands that police be defunded. And then even though police have been refunded in Portland, they continue to struggle severely with hiring because nobody wants to work in Portland, understandably. And if you are a resident of Portland, a citizen of Portland, a taxpayer in Portland, you have really no recourse as you see mobs of far left rioters rampage through your neighborhood and destroy your community. As part of the attack, they smashed up the Mother and Child Center here, by the way, and wrote F. SCOTUS. The thing is, the Mother and Child Center is a pregnancy resource center, but it's not anti-abortion. It is literally a registered nonprofit that provides resources for people who have already decided to have children. And so they provide aid to a lot of refugee expecting parents and families, and the person who runs the charity went out the next day and spoke with press and said, we're not anti-abortion. I'm not anti-abortion," she said. And they had a big sign up that said, "All are welcome here." It's a sign that was posted everywhere in Portland in 2020. All migrants are welcome here, all gender identities, all sexual orientations. It just lists, and it says it's a safe space. And Portland police posted an image. Let me pull it up, showing that the Antifa smashed the window where this safe space sign was. Let me find it. Here we go. Oops. That's from the Portland Police press release. Yeah. "We welcome all races, religion, countries of origin, blah, 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 blah." These went up everywhere in Portland after Trump was elected. And yeah, the windows like smashed out. Apparently, about $10,000 in damages was done. And it takes really a few seconds for the Antifa to do that, because there's a mob of them and they carry these window breaking tools and spray paint. And then that was just the second day of violence. And then there was the third day. I'll get to the fourth in a bit. This was during the daytime. And again, there was a flyer for it. So this is June 26th, the third day of violence. So they had an event called Radical Pride, and they held it at Laurelhurst Park. And then after that, they went on to riot. These events that they put on, it's a chance for them to recruit members and to radicalize people. The literature that they have there is really, really extreme. Like, if if this was to take place in a country in the EU, there would be legislation prosecuting the possession of some of these extremist materials, by the way. And then, they smashed up businesses in Southeast Portland and smashed up a police car with rocks, sprayed threw paint on businesses. Police actually tried to respond, but according to their press release, they didn't have enough people. And once they began being hit with the projectile weapons, they retreated. You can imagine that all this has emboldened them, Antifa, more and more. So that was on the third day. There were no arrests, by the way, for the 3 days of violence in a row. And then it led to the fourth straight day of violence in Portland occurred on Monday of this week. Again, flyer, Colonel Summers Park, Monday, June 27th, 7 p.m. It's just announced right on Twitter. There was a very large group of them that gathered from the park. They marched to a pregnancy resource center, First Image. A church rents out part of the building space to this pregnancy resource center, and they smashed out every window. The church had already desperately attempted to board up what windows they could. They didn't have enough time. And so a lot of the windows were smashed out, and you can see the messages that they wrote: "Kill the KKK courts, ACAB, F the pigs," and then the 3 arrows symbol of Antifa. So yeah, Oregon has some of the most, I should say some of the least restrictions. I should say no restrictions on abortion anywhere in the world. And this is where some of the most violent pro-abortion violence has happened by far left extremists. You notice that there's not very much video that I've been showing talking about the 4 days of violence in Portland, and that's because journalists like myself and many others, have been beaten, robbed, and threatened to the point where they just don't come anymore. But outside the Pregnancy Resource Center in Portland on Monday, Chelly Boothrash, she's Honey Badger Mom on Twitter, she showed up. She's a 52-year-old woman, single mother of 3. She's a photojournalist. She covered, by the way, the day that I was beaten in 2019. She was a stringer photographer at that time for The Federalist. And she showed up with her camera. And outside of them, I think, okay, Antifa might be annoying, but they're not going to go after a middle-aged woman with a camera, with her phone out. But they did. You can see, I'll play a couple of the videos.
Okay, you better get away from me.
When healthcare is under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
Stand up, fight back!
So they're spraying up the building right now.
What's up? Nothing.
Go inside. Oh my God.
I'm not gonna go inside.
Okay, cool. You're not gonna take my friends either.
I'm. Get off
Dancy,
me.
dancy, dancy. I dare you to fucking mace me, cunt. I fucking dare you.
Yeah, so these pro-abortion activists, right? That person who was jumping around and trying to prevent a co-conspirator to the crime. She was trying to prevent the documentation of a crime, and she was harassing a journalist in the process. Her name is Felicia Blair Shunke. She legally changed her name to Princess Unicorn in Portland. She's also one of the main fundraisers for Antifa in Portland. She creates these GoFundMes for her violent comrades who have been charged with felony crimes. According to GoFundMe policies, you're not allowed to fundraise for those who are have been charged with violent crimes, but she does. She creates multiple accounts. And GoFundMe has not taken down these campaigns. So that's who that individual was. Unfortunately, it didn't just stay with that harassment of jumping around and using misogynistic insults. It escalated, as you can expect. And this is what happened next to Chelly.
That's not who I was calling.
Actually, close it right there.
I'm not calling the cops.
They don't want to fucking help you. Nobody gives a shit about you.
So that's the aftermath.
Yeah, so that broken umbrella on the ground on the screen, they hit her with that screen. And they were using their umbrellas to jab her, by the way. And so the police were nearby. They didn't intervene. And they made no arrests. She reported the assault to police. Unfortunately, that wasn't all. Here's a video of another one of these assaults. Watch, mob of them surround her. Chelly Boothrash. She's a 52-year-old single mother of 3. They're jabbing her, hitting her camera to the ground. Nobody tells them to stop. Watch, hit her head, hit her phone to the ground, hit her glasses to the ground, watch. Destroys her glasses. So these are a group of criminal thugs. That's what they are. They operate as a gang. as you can see. They hide their faces, they wear their black uniforms, and they commit crimes against citizens, against people of the public, and they do it with impunity in Portland. Nobody's been arrested for the 4 days of violence, and Antifa have announced another riot to take place on Friday, tomorrow. So yeah, Charlie, by the way, if you can support her, please. This is her Cash App and Venmo handle is Chelly Boothfarash. Just show her some support. There's, as I said before, there's not much work, not much pay in this type of work, and she came out on her own. She wasn't paid by anybody, and she got smacked up for it, and nobody helped. Gosh, it's always 7:46, and I did not even get to my big investigative report that came out tonight, but I have to talk about that. So, I had been working on a very deep dive investigation on a pretty shocking event that was supposed to happen in Portland. A number of weeks ago, a advertisement popped up on Twitter, and this is from my report. Well, yeah, I'm talking about a little more before I show the screen. So the advertisement said that there was a photo shoot to be organized in a park in Portland. It's Pride themed, that there would be hair, makeup, and nails, and that the children could change their clothes. There'd be wardrobe there. And it was asking for parents and guardians to sign their children up, and it also inform if a parent will be there with the child. It was posted on an anonymous account, and it was shared widely by Antifa accounts on Twitter. No name was attached to the flyer, to the account that had posted this, the organizer. And it was also soliciting for other volunteers to come forward for this children's photo shoot. Well, I did a lot of deep diving and found out that the person who's running it is an Antifa member, and not just an Antifa member, but is a porn maker who makes and sells sexually explicit content. This is my report that came out on the Post Millennial. The pornographer's name is Kennedy Louise Burley, pronouns they, them, trans Antifa member in Portland. I dug very deep into this person's background, and it's pretty disturbing. They are currently fundraising for an Antifa member in Portland who was convicted both in federal and state court of attempted murder, possessing bombs. And they play a very high role in Antifa in Portland. And the same account that was advertising this Twitter account, because this person used Screaming Tater was the name. The account has since been locked down. They changed the handle. The same account that was advertising for this children's photo shoot event was also posting pornographic material of themselves. And obviously the pictures have had to be censored for the report. They have a porn adult count on Pocket Stars, which is very similar to OnlyFans. Yeah, so that's Kennedy Louise Burley on the left. They're evading a permanent suspension before. Their prior account here was a screenshot from the left, and they also posted pornographic material on there. The content on this Pocket Fans account cannot be shown. It's very sexually graphic. I'll just say that. Some of the people who volunteered for the event is also noteworthy, by the way. One person that came forward So these are some screenshots of people volunteering for this photo shoot. So this was on May 29th. Count me in too. This is such a good idea. And Kennedy Burley responded, F yes, the more trans adults involved, the better. Well, that person just above, the name Switch. That's this person on the right. The name is Robert John Stones. That's the legal name of a trans Antifa militant who was recently arrested for alleged violence in Idaho. This is one of the volunteers, a 33-year-old individual who's has an open case right now for a violent crime in Idaho. Another person who volunteered to take pictures was Geneva Thornhill. Uses the name Pastel Slut on Twitter. So she wrote, here for this, I'm a photographer and super down to donate a day of work. So from this same account that she volunteered, she's also selling her porn. So here's another tweet from that same account. Did you know I offer private sales outside of OnlyFans? I have over 4 hours worth of sex tapes and thousands of photos. Send me a DM for details. Yeah, so that's just a highlight of some of the people who volunteered. You have another porn maker, you have an alleged violent person who's involved in Antifa. And Kennedy's Burley's content is, it was just filled with sexually graphic material. And Kennedy Burley is really extreme to the point where they tattoo Antifa stuff on their body, like the 1312 on the buttocks. In my report, Burley got a tattoo of a spoon, and spoon was the moniker alias for a violent Antifa member who killed itself last year. You may remember that this individual targeted me a lot on social media before killing itself. Yeah, some more pictures. That's Kennedy Burley there. They were a partner in a polyamorous sexual relationship with this person on the left, Christian Burke, who used the name Creme Brulee. Burke in 2020 was federally arrested and accused at that time of assaulting federal officers by throwing large rocks at a riot. Yeah, so that's my report. Please read the original investigation on the post-millennial. Okay. Give me just a second to catch up with the questions and comments. We only have a little bit of time left. Thank you so much. It was jam-packed episode. There's so much more that I wanted to get to, but there's no time. I wonder if I should do a, follow-up, bonus session sometime in the future. Okay. Just a moment, please. Canadian Mom 1997 asks, why have there been no arrests for the people who threatened Scottish judges? Well, there was one, the man who allegedly had a murder-suicide plot and came allegedly armed near the family property of Justice Kavanaugh. Yesterday in Olympia, Washington, there was a trans person who was arrested for smashing up a Catholic church that was arrested. I think, as far as I know, those have been the only two pro-abortion militant related arrests. But as you have noticed in my reporting, there are hundreds and hundreds of other examples. I think the lack of urgency that we see here is probably because of the fact that wider society doesn't really see those threats as a problem. They themselves are calling those judges and the entire court itself illegitimate. And this is what I mean when I say it's very un-American, illiberal, undemocratic, and I would say it's quite scary for people to view government institutions in the United States as legitimate only if it does what these people agree with. We've heard a lot of chatter about how questioning or being skeptical of the election results in 2020 is, a sign of an insurrectionist. You have all these people who did the same in 2016, by the way, and who would have done in 2020 if Trump had won. Question elections all the time and actually still spread lies about it, such as what happened in Georgia when Stacey Abrams lost running for governor. But for them to say that the Supreme Court is illegitimate because they don't like this opinion, the trend, it seems, in a very short amount of time, we're talking just a few years, we see a mainstream view taken the left that is questioning the very nature of the rule of law in America simply based on partisan politics. Psychrelix asks, why aren't other conservative commentators talking about these militant groups? Well, I see that Fox News sometimes has been covering the dozens of attacks on the pregnancy resource centers, but to dive deeper into those who are involved, I mean, it takes a bit of work, and in a way, it's unfortunately it appears esoteric, and by that I mean like you have to have a lot of background to kind of understand, because it is kind of confusing, right? You see all the screenshots that I posted are coming from anonymous groups, but it doesn't actually take a lot of effort to see, oh, this is where they're posting the claim of responsibility. These are the Twitter accounts that are calling for violence. These are accounts that have posted evidence of their involvement in violence. This is the videos and photos taken by journalists of them carrying out the violence. And you can put together and understand the movement, the groups, the militants, the cells that are involved. But that takes a bit more work. And I think for the average commentator, it may just be it's too deep of an investigation for them. And so, hopefully my work can kind of simplify it a little bit. I try to present it in a way that's hopefully easier to understand. Okay. Let me go through some more of these. Porky Logan 59 asks, can you describe some of the intersectionality of Antifa? So, so let's just talk about ideology. So you have this intersection of primarily militant anarchist politics, but that's merged also with communism. It's merged with revolutionary politics, and then it's merged with violent direct action militancy. And then on top of that, you have things of so-called anti-fascism, anti-racism. And it all comes together into basically this ideology that's sort of pan far left. By pan, I mean like includes many different things. So it appeals to a wide group of people on the far militant left. And within, there's actually a lot of disagreement, but they try to keep that away from public eyes because they want people to perceive them as having a unified front. And for right now, they do have a unified front because they're united with the mainstream left in hatred of pregnancy resource centers, hatred of conservatives, and hatred of the Supreme Court. So you have people like Senator Warren in Massachusetts saying that she's going to pass legislation to try to outlaw or restrict some of these pregnancy resource centers. So, they're on the same side in a way with the militants who are attacking these pregnancy resource centers. They express the same hatred of it. The hatred is manifested in different ways. That's how I would say. So when people talking about are Democrats and Antifa the same, they're not the same. But you can see where their interests quite often either are the same or are parallel to one another, where they mutually benefit in their various actions, right? Either through violent criminal means or through the democratic process. Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining in this week's weekly notice. I really appreciate your questions and comments and your support. I'm going to pull up where you can my link tree so you can see the places you can go to support me. Here, yeah. So on Linktree, just /AndyNGO, and you can see all my links. Again, if you can, please consider like doing a financial pledge on Locals or Patreon or Subscribestar, and the links are there. If you don't feel comfortable with that or you can't, I also have the PayPal, a Cash App, and Venmo. My username there is the same as on my Getter, on my Twitter, elsewhere. It's at Mr. Andy NGO. And other links, you can buy my book. I still have an ongoing lawsuit against those who assaulted me in 2019. And you can see all my other social media links. I'm on YouTube, by the way. Some people don't know that. At the Telegram channel as well. So thank you so much. It's a really uncertain time right now. It's really scary because there's been nearly daily violence by the far left in some city in America now for a week. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And have a good Thursday night and weekend starting tomorrow. Bye.